Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. So, one of these stupid TCG investing tropes that I get from time to time in comments on my videos are, Craig, you can't possibly be making any money because it costs so much to store these products. And yeah, I know Patrick Boyle did a video probably 24 months ago. He was talking about alternative investments. And in it, he kind of passingly mentions collectibles and he mentions how storage costs eliminate all of your gains. And it's really weird to me. I mean, I could imagine if you're talking about a collection of antique cars, yes, that's going to cost some money to store. I mean, you look at Jay Leno's garage, and yeah, he's 10 sigma to the right on the bell curve, but that costs a lot of money to upkeep. And classic cars, they fall apart unless you constantly do maintenance on them. That's just the nature of all the rubber parts in them, some of the plastics, some of the fabrics, especially on older cars, they just don't have good longevity. Also, if you're talking about, say, antique furniture as an investment class, well, yeah, that's going to take a lot of storage volume and that may add up at some point. I don't really know what the antique furniture market looks like. Let me know in the comments if you do. But when it comes to TCG investing, this idea that storage costs eat up all your gains, it's stupid, and I'll prove it with math. Okay, so let's say that you've been in this hobby with me for the last 4 years that I've been running Final Trade, and you've bought boxes consistently and you have to store them. And let's say that you get one of those 2 foot deep by 4 foot wide metal storage shelves that they used to have on Black Friday for $70, $80, $100. Okay. So standard storage shelves, they typically come with 5 levels. They're about 6 feet tall. And we're going to assume you buy one of those. Now, we're making a huge assumption here that you have 8 square feet of footprint in your house that you can devote to this. Okay. Maybe if you live in downtown Tokyo, this won't be good enough for you. But let's say you can devote 8 square feet to your TCG investment hobby. Okay. And let's say, like most older homes in the United States, you have 8 foot tall ceilings. Okay. Newer homes tend to have 9 and 10 foot ceilings, but 8 foot makes these calculations even more conservative to highlight even better the absurdity of this argument. Okay, so you're starting with a 2 foot by 4 foot shelving unit. You've got 8 foot ceilings. You're going to lose about 1 foot of vertical height because of the thickness of the shelves themselves on a lot of these shelving units. And yes, I actually did go measure a shelving unit for that number. So you're going to lose about 1 foot. So, you've got 2 by 4 on the footprint. That's 8 square feet. And you've got 7 feet high, assuming you live in an older American house with 8 foot ceilings and you've lost a foot to shelves. That gives you 56 cubic feet. Okay, 56 cubic feet. That's the first thing I'm going to write up here, okay? We've got 56, and we're going to do that as feet cubed. Okay, 56 cubic feet. And we're going to pretend like the boxes you buy, they can just magically fit in to fill all the volume. Yeah, you'll have a little bit of wastage, but you'll see it absolutely does not matter. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is Pokemon. Let's say, and I have some patrons who do this, let's say all you buy is Pokemon boxes. You've watched my videos on long-term Pokemon box returns and you see that 15, 25, sometimes even 35% compound annual growth rates are pretty normal for Pokemon booster boxes. And so you're cruelly here only for the money. And so all you want to buy is the best asset. And so you buy equal amounts of every Pokemon box that comes along. How big is a Pokemon box? Well, 5 inches by 5.5 inches by about 3 inches. Yeah, I went and measured them. Who would have thought Craig would do that after an entire career of simulation and math modeling, that I would go and actually collect data, measurements, create a model, and show you the results. Okay, so if you take this, you multiply this out, and you get a volume of an individual Pokemon booster box, and you take this 56 cubic feet and you divide by the volume of a Pokemon box and you do all of your adjustments for feet to inches, what you come out with is that your one 2-foot by 4-foot shelving unit with an 8-foot tall ceiling in a normal older American home, you can store 1,172 boxes. All right. That's how many Pokemon boxes you can fit on one shelf. Remember, you only need 8 square feet of space, and you can store almost 1,200 boxes. Okay. Now, let's say that upon this shelf, you are going to put equal numbers of all the Sword and Shield era boxes that you were with me through all of 21 and 22 and 23 when I was giving you deals to buy these boxes, and you dutifully came along with Final Trade. You put the boxes back, and now you're storing them on this shelving unit in equal numbers. And of course, you bought equal numbers because we can't see the future here. We don't know which one will be the Evolving Skies and which one will be the Battle Styles. So you had equal numbers of each. That comes out to about 98 boxes of each of the 12 Sword and Shield era sets. And if you go out and you look today, one of each of these boxes will cost you $4,520 to get one of each of these boxes. And you can hold 98 of each of these boxes on this one shelving unit. And if you multiply that out, it comes to $442,960 of Pokemon boxes you can hold on a single 2-foot by 8-foot footprint shelf with 8-foot ceilings. Okay. And I know some people will be saying, but Craig, I live in the center of downtown Tokyo, and space is expensive. Okay, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to some calculations in time, but I want to do a second example first, and I'm going to do MTG collector boxes. Okay, we're going to do the same exact thing here in MTG collector box. It is 5 by 5.5 again. It's got that same aspect, and it is only about 1 3/8 thick. Sorry, I wrote what I was saying there. 1.375. And what you'll find with this is, with this smaller size per box, you can fit 2,559 boxes on your one shelving unit. And if you had bought equal amounts of all the Magic collector boxes that have ever been released, all about 34 of them, I don't count garbage like Aftermath, but the 34 other ones that we care about, you would get 75 of each box. Let's see, how do I want to write that? Of each box. And if you go out today, and it's real convenient for me because I made my long-term Magic collector box performance update video just yesterday, so I had current data just sitting there. Going out today on TCG Player and buying one of each of the 34 collector boxes that have been released would cost you $10,983. And if you multiply that $10,983 by 75 of each box, you get, here we go, $826,682. So if you take your single 2-foot by 4-foot shelving unit in your 8-foot ceiling American home, and you fill it as tight as it'll go with Magic collector boxes, it will hold $827,000 worth of collector boxes, assuming that, you've come along with Final Trade this whole journey, these last 4 years, you've bought religiously, and you've put equal amounts of all the boxes back. That's what it'll hold. And I know you're saying, because every one of you is 12 sigma to the right of the average on the bell curve, you're saying, Craig, I live in Times Square, where real estate is super expensive. I live both in downtown Tokyo and Times Square at the same time. I have the most expensive real estate in the world. There's no way I can afford 8 square feet to store it. And thus it's too expensive. It's too expensive to store it. Well, let's talk about a little bit closer to reality. Here where I live, in Texas, you will pay about $26 per square foot per year for commercial space. That's what commercial space looks like. Okay, and commercial space is typically going to be more expensive than industrial space. And, the reality is, if you were so hyper serious that you had $800,000 of Magic collector boxes, well, you've probably got an industrial warehouse to store things in. You're not going to be storing it in commercial space because that's an inefficient way to do it. But we're going to go with that number because it makes all of this even more conservative. Okay, so if we go back to our Pokemon example, and remember, we came out with this number, $442,000 total, and you divide that by the 8 square feet that it requires, you get $55,000 per square foot is what you can store. Let's say you've just filled all of these individual square feet with Pokemon. You've piled them up 7 feet high because you need room for the shelves in between and your 8-foot ceiling house. And you're getting $55,000 per square foot stored. Okay. So let me write that here. $55,000 per square foot. That's what you're storing on your Pokemon shelf. And it's going to cost you $26 per square foot per year to store it. Now, again, we're talking about Pokemon. And again, I've done the videos for years now showing long-term Pokemon performance where 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, occasionally 40% compound annual growth rate is just normal for Pokemon. At some point, you have to accept, yes, this is just what it does. Okay, we're going to assume it does so bad as 20% compound annual growth rate. Okay, so every one of those individual single square feet of Pokemon boxes you have stacked 7 feet high, and each one of those square feet has $55,000 of Pokemon boxes in it, and it gains value at 20% compounding. So this next year, it's going to gain $11,000 in value this coming year. We're going to put that as $11,000 gain in the next year. And you're going to pay $26 of those $11,000 that you gained in order to store it. So your actual storage cost is $26 for that 1 square foot, and it will gain you $11,000. And again, 20% return on Pokemon, that's actually conservative. When you go and you look at the average amounts, it's closer to, high 20s to low 30s is what you average across eras going back about 15 years. So 20% that we've used for this is conservative. So it's going to go up $11,000 per square foot of product you're storing per year, or just this year because it's compounding. But $11,000, and it'll cost you $26 for the year to store it. What does that percentage come to? 0.2%. I'm just going to try to, 0.2%. These are your storage costs compared to your actual gain. You will spend 0.2% of your gains on this theoretical shelf full of Pokemon in order to store it. 0.2%. Where are you going to spend on electricity? Where are you going to spend on insurance? What are you going to spend on everything else associated with running a business? And it takes a mere 0.2% to actually pay to store it. You see, the people who go around saying, well, it just costs too much money. You can't make any money on this stuff because it costs so much to store it. They've heard someone else say that. And they're predisposed to think that this whole hobby is stupid and that we don't know what we're doing and we can never make any money and we're just invest bros. And so when they hear someone say it, they say, well, that confirms what I would emotionally like to believe. And so they turn their brain off and they don't think, are there actually any numbers I could use? Could I build a model? And then could I put those numbers into the model and test this and see what the answer is? And that's the difference. On Final Trade, that's what we do. We come to the whiteboard and we use real math and we figure out, yeah, if you had filled your 2-foot by 4-foot shelving unit with Pokemon boxes from the Sword and Shield era, you don't have to be a genius. You didn't have to guess that Evolving Skies was going to be the big winner. You just had to buy equal amounts of everything, and you would have had $55,000 in every square foot of footprint on that shelving unit. And next year, if it only gains 20%, which again is conservative, it'll go up by $11,000, and you're going to store it in one of the most expensive places in reality to store it, $26 per square foot per year, because we're going to use commercial space to store it. Then you're paying out 0.2% of the appreciation of the product for 1 year. So if you still think that this costs too much to store it, that none of us can be making any money in this hobby because it costs so much money to store this product, please, with good faith, explain it in the comments below with numbers. Do the math, show the numbers. I will, in good faith, entertain it and read it. And if you convince me, I'll come back and make another video about this. I'm skeptical because I'll tell you the total amount I've spent in 4 years of Final Trade to store this product, it's zero. I have spent $0 because the reality is it's not as big as you're imagining in your mind. The total volume of the product you're going to be buying is not nearly so huge as you're initially imagining. I mean, in our Magic example, we put 2,559 boxes on that shelf. And in the Pokemon example, 1,172 boxes on the shelf. That's going to take you a while to buy. I mean, even if you're getting these at $100 a box, that's what, $117,000. You know, we all have different rates at which we can put $117,000 of capitalization into our businesses. But for most people, that's not going to be super fast. And if it is, you can definitely afford to store the stuff too. So I've spent $0 storing it because I just use extra room in my house that I've already purchased. If I'm missing something here, please let me know. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon who bought me this wonderful whiteboard. I love you guys. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Join the Patreon.